appreciate it. So this is the Leadership Baton Rouge Class of 2026. Hey, how are you?
All right, how y'all doing? Evidently, y'all have never been to Baker, huh? Y'all never been to Baker? You live in Baker. So here's our motto in Baker. When you're in Baker, let your hair down. Well, Sister Baker Mary's here, let your hair down. So how y'all doing? That's what I'm talking about, just be you. All right, so look, I always tell this story here, and a lot of people, they don't actually believe the story, but I truly do. I'm not from Louisiana, okay? I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida on the side of town called East Jacks. And East Jacks is when they show that big pretty stadium in Jacksonville, Florida. It's on the other side of the expressway, is Wild Wild West. So that's how I grew up. But I grew up in a family where my mom was an educator and all her kids went on to be educators except me. And we grew up in that environment where she always said, it's not where you come from, but it's where you're going. So I joined the military when I was 21 years old, and I did 27 years in the Army. I would do it again. I've been all over the world, I cared about, I understood what the flag was about. I know as a black man, they say, well, why do you care so much? Because I understand that the principle was there. Sometimes they don't follow what the guide is, but my mom used to tell me, you do what you're supposed to do and everybody else will do what they do, which means that your role is your role. So my role was to always serve. And so I came out here, I was divorced, I came out here and I met a woman, ate some food, and I've been here since 2000. I retired in 2007, and 9 months after I retired, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, stage 3, and just changed everything about what I wanted to do. I was going to sell insurance and be a millionaire. That's what I was going to do, and not do anything else again. But I started working at the high school where my son was going to school, and I'm kind of loud, so I went over there volunteering, and then I started Tracy Morgan, which was the principal at that time. She said, you want to substitute? I said, yeah, I'll substitute teach. I had a degree. And I started doing it. And every year I was going to just do 2 weeks at a time. But every year she kept saying, come on back, you staying. Okay, so ended up being the PTO president, coaching basketball. And from there I ran into the former Mayor Baker, which was Mayor Rito, which I would go help him. He was a veteran too. And so he called me over there. He said, look, you want to come over here and be my number 2? I said, yes, I'll do that. And so I went over and spent 2 years with him. When he got ready to retire, I was going to walk out the door with him. But I don't know whether some of y'all know this or not. Sometimes when God put on you, he'll let you know. And I have always wondered why I was so different than everybody else, because I had that anointing on me the whole time. Just didn't know what it was until this time came here. So it was just nudging me, nudging me. And people just kept saying, you ought to run, you ought to run. Well, I'm not from here. I don't know anybody. And the people that I was going to run against, they had been living in Baker for 30, 40 years. They were powerhouse politicians. They really were. But God had a plan. And so we beat them 3 times. We won 3 times in a row, not being from here. And then I remember the night that we won the first time. And then we went in the next day to talk. And the vision for the whole city just fell in front of me. I could see it, where we wanted to go. But 30 days later, I had a flood. 30 days in office, we had a flood. We lost 60% of that city. Everything was underwater. It was just one of those situations where God tested me to trust him. So that's how I got to that point. I never looked back from there. I've always moved forward, learned the job. The first 4 years, didn't really know what I was doing, just trying to figure it out, trying to, people come and go. But after that, we continued to move. So no matter what came our way, we continued to move. And we came up with the slogan, moving Baker forward. It's a hard deal. It's a hard deal where every other city down in North Baton Rouge down there, they're doing really well and you're struggling to do what you gotta do. Well, we just kept pushing forward, kept meeting people, kept networking, kept believing in who we were as a city and what we could do, what the promise of it is. It's always about the hope. And every time we hit a point where we got to a goal, we stopped for a minute and say, God, thank you, and then we kept it moving. And that's what we're gonna do. Now, a lot of people always ask me, people always tell you, well, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, we're gonna vote you out of here. And this is what I tell them. You didn't put me in here, you can't take me out of here. Because I understand that God is the author of all time and seasons. So when my time to go, I'm gonna take my stuff off the wall and I'm going to the house and chill. That's what I'm gonna do. And I don't worry about that. You just keep working. So I wanna leave you with something real quick. Always fall in love in the middle of what you got going. In other words, from start to finish, always fall in love with the journey. The journey is where you grow. The journey is where you find out who you are. The journey is where you learn to care about what you're doing. Because when you get to the end, it's just the end. And you start. So you start, but in the middle, it will show you who you really are and what you really believe. And that means that nobody can stop you when you're moving. So it's impossible to stop a man or a woman who will not quit. And we're not quitting in Baker. We're not quitting at all. So we're just gonna keep moving forward. Is that?
They gave me the big long questions, right?
We good.
Well, I think here's a thing so we spent our morning at the state capitol with some of my members of our capital area delegation. And I think one of the things that we heard around a lot was about connectivity and what do you need from us to help move Baker forward. So can you talk a little bit about interaction and that advocacy work?
It's the narrative about any place. And so we have to keep it real, because we're 80% African American. There's a different narrative. People don't want to believe that, but it's a different narrative coming for that city. They look at the city and they automatically get judged. And everywhere you go, you're going to get that judgment. So the connectivity is really the people living there being able to change the narrative of how people see us. Now, when we go into places like the legislature, which we spend a lot of time in, a lot of those people, except for Senator Barrow and Regina and Barbara, that's what we know. But we had to put that time in to find out, to get to know those other people. Now, here's the thing that I did, so we connect to that. My mom told me one time, she said, if you want to know what's going on around you, she said, you need to be sitting at the table. Okay? And so I spent my time networking so I can sit at the table. Now, is that hard work? That is something. And, if you don't believe me, go ask my wife. She don't like it because you always gone. You always here. But then my mama told me, said, when you sit at the table, now you got to run the table. In other words, if they're making decisions about you, then you run the table so you can be a part of the decision-making process and you can navigate where you want to go. At the end of the day, everything I do is for that city. I'm committed to it 100%. That's the only reason that I'm here. And so we do that 100% deal and we go there. So that's how we connect.
I have a question. What are some of your crowning achievements in the city of Baker from the time that you started to now, and where's the city going?
Man, we dry. 10 years ago, we were wet. We dry. They said that you cannot build houses without a school system. That's not true. We started building houses 2.5 years ago, and our school system was still one of the worst school systems that you can think about. Now, I understand I come from an environment where when they say your school system is no good, then it creates flight. Businesses are not coming, you don't have rooftops, and that's it. But that is the template. So I work to get the infrastructure available so we can start building. Because I changed the narrative. I took money out of my pocket. I went to talk to people on my dime to sell the story. That's all I did. 10-minute commercial. Come to Baker, we have this going on. How many of y'all remember when we were fighting for the zoo? When we were all fighting for the zoo? Let me tell you why it was important to me, because you could throw a rock at it. It's not in Baker. It's right across the street. You can throw a rock at it, but it's indirect economic development. When you come out of the zoo, I want you to make a right and come to Baker. And we sold that, and that's how we do it. So in order to connect and do all the things that you need to do and let people know who you are, you got to get out front. I'm the out front guy. We improved our communication. People say, why you walk around with all those people behind you? Because I want people to hear the good part of us. I want people to see the good part of us. Now, I'm not your formal speaker that they have. I'm not. I'm just going to be me. So I'm going to connect with those people who understand he's just being himself. It's not always pretty, but I don't care. You understand where I'm coming from. Yes, sir.
How you doing, man? Dexter Jackson. You mentioned your school system out in Baker, and I'm young enough to remember when Baker split off and Central and all those things. And I'm just curious, I've never been explained the reason why having an independent school district is a benefit, and as you've moved on, has there been any conversation or thought about coming back to East Baton Rouge Parish School System?
We've heard that a lot, but how old are you?
Just turned 37.
Just turned 37. That's why you don't understand why. Okay, so here's the deal. No matter, I don't want to speak for that mayor at that time why they did that, but it always has to do with people controlling their boundaries. I guess that's a nice way to say it. They wanted to control their boundaries. They wanted to keep their schools to their kids. They didn't want anybody else coming to their schools, and that's what happens, and that's why they did that. But right now, when I tried to protect that for years, so people said we need to go back. Leadership is key with everything, and I'm just gonna try to be nice without being nice. But here, leadership is everything. So for 10 years, for 8 years, that school continued to fail. It's failing for while I got there. For whatever reason, not for me to speak up and hear about it. I woke up one morning a couple of months ago, and I was fighting charter schools all the way. Always in front, always down there, here he come, with all these people fighting charter schools, because I grew up in a public school environment. But I woke up one day and I had 4 K-8 charter schools, just like that. All right, I called my daughter out in Warner Robins. She's been teaching now for 16 years. She said, "Dad, you need to let that go." She said, charter schools is everywhere. So you always talking about God closing doors and opening up doors. She said, you better start acting like what you talk about. And so what I did was, I said, okay. So I sat down with all the schools that were there. Okay, we got to keep the high school, and that's the lifeline for Baker, for people who live there for years. We got to keep that, and I asked them, I say the K-8s, I say, listen, can we work together to push all those kids out of those K-8s to the high school? So we can build a high school. We can keep it moving. We can get it up to about 1,500, and then we can keep extending it and be a big high school again. Just gotta live with it, But when I did that, then I had 2 more developments to come in, because now they built the development, and that's what he wants me to tell you. So the development on 964, those of you who know where that goes, to Zachary. Okay, before that, stay with me, about 4 years before that, a guy bought 55 acres. This was right across the street from there. Now, Baker stops right there at that 55 acres. And so he needed infrastructure. So what I did was, I put his infrastructure in, but I took it across the street. I put the sewage in, the water in, and the gas, and I moved it across the street. It cost some money. They said, we're gonna run you out of town. You crazy, there ain't nothing over there. Now they got 1,000 homes being built over there. Guess what? We got all the water and the gas. It's not in Baker, but we got all the water and the gas, because we have a utility system, and that works. Then I went and got a bond, put the water tower up so they could have water, because they were pumping water all the way across the tracks over there by the high school, all the way down to 964 in those places over there. So now we got the water tower, and we just went and got the money for the fire station. And that came from Senator Kennedy. That's why I don't deal with Republicans and Democrats at the local level. Because when that lady called me and she said something is broke, I don't care whether she's a Republican, white, black, Latino, I gotta help. Local leadership is local leadership. We deal with them every day. And so that's some of the plans that we got going on. The last thing I'm gonna tell you about is the baseball field. The Little League baseball field. Those of you who know about Baker, they had that Little League baseball field for years over there. Everybody loved that. I tore it down. I went and I tore it down. Once again, they were gonna run me out of the city. This boy crazy. But what I did is I tore it down and I went and found $400,000 to rebuild it and put a rug on it, made it beautiful. It's gonna be beautiful. It should be finished in the next months. And they say, why are you always talking about baseball fields? Well, we start with the little kids, and now I just got back from Washington last week. We're looking to start building on a complex with 3 fields with rugs on it and everything else, went to Cleo, and he came through. He came through, went down there and talked to him, he came through. But what baseball does, it's year round. People come year round. They want to know, they say, well, why we can't get the hotels and the restaurants like Zachary? You get a baseball field where people coming, the hotels are gonna come. They're not gonna play. The restaurant's gonna follow that because them people coming in every weekend. Every weekend. And when David Amaron told me how much money he was making extra from that baseball field, I started working on that. It's all about who you know, what you know, and how to work it. So everything we're doing is just not willy-nilly. It is a plan put together, but you just can't work on this plan and say, this is the plan I'm working on right now. You gotta learn how to work on all of them at the same time and make them meet where you want it. So what I want economic development, I want good schools, I want good housing, but most of all, I want people to understand that just because that you're in politics, that you don't have to be, you can be good people. And good people, normally, if you understand the principles of God and who God is good people, you love everybody. They don't have to love you back. But if you show that you can, if you just treat people right, that's what they're gonna remember. They're not gonna remember everything you did for them, but they're gonna remember how you treated them.